obviously today we're debating, like I said, does a Christian God exist? Jack is taking the affirmative. Leo is taking the negative. So Jack, because you're taking the affirmative, go ahead and introduce yourself initially, plug your channel, and then we'll have Leo do that after.
Thank you very much. If you're hearing noise, there's a big storm moving in right now, but my name is Jack Talcott. At Jack Talcott on the Instagrams and the YouTubes and stuff, but I do daily live streams each day. I've been doing open panels as well. Conversations vary, but it's typically directed towards the topics of God, consciousness, and my passion is peace. So I talk about wanting to end wars a lot as well. So I'm excited for the opportunity, because this is it has become important to me, this topic. Thank you.
And how can people find you on YouTube? What's your YouTube link? Do you have that memorized?
It's Jack Talcott.
Perfect. And then I've got him linked in the bio too. And then Leophilius, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I like to talk about things like physics and philosophy on my YouTube channel, where I haven't posted in almost a year, but that's changing very, very soon. I specialize in areas of cosmology and quantum mechanics, as well as philosophy of science and metaphysics. I am not a professional in any field, but I have done a number of college-level courses and coursework in a variety of subjects that are associated with my channel. And you can find me at youtube.com/C/Leophilius, spelled as you see on the screen.
Perfect. Well, it's a pleasure to have both of you here today. I'm going to cover I know I messaged this to both of you prior to the debate, but I'm going to cover all this so just the audience knows the format and you guys have a quick refresher. If you guys have any questions, just ask. The format's pretty simple. The affirmative. So, Jack, you're going to have a 10-minute introduction. You can cede your time if you end early. Same thing for you, Leo. You're the negative, so you'll have that immediately after the affirmative. Affirmative always goes first in this. And then the affirmative is going to do the cross-exam, so that'll be you, Jack. That's a 30-minute cross-exam. The negative cross-exam will be 30 minutes as well immediately after that. We'll have, it sounds like probably more than 20 to 30 minutes for audience questions. Super chats in the live stream do get top priority, and then the live hands raised in the audience here, and then the text questions in the live stream will get the bottom priority. So just a heads up for the people in the stream, the various streams. If you want to do a text question, just hop onto my YouTube, youtube.com/@realbreakfasttacos. There's a question and answer thing. Doesn't cost anything. You can just put a question in there. The debate guidelines are very simple and fair, so there's going to be no over-talking during the introductions and closing statements. Let the person whose time it is there have all their time. You have no reason to talk during the other person's introduction or closing statements. The cross-examination rules, each debater may reclaim their time during the cross-exam if the discussion is beginning to stray off topic. Just say, I want my time back, and the appropriate debater will be back in control of the questions during the cross-exam. You're in control of your cross-examination period. The questioning portion, only the debater whose turn it is in the cross-exam should ask questions. When a question is posed, please respond directly and concisely. Do not ask questions outside of your designated turn, although clarifying questions are okay. Don't turn their cross-examination into your cross-examination. There are some clarification and draining the clock rules that we added just in case we get into that. You both had that via text, so there's not going to be any questions when that's happening if there needs some extra time. But we set a pool of up to 9 minutes aside for additional requests and whatnot during the cross-exam, just so they can have a little bit more of a back and forth if needed. And then there's audience questions. Audience questions are not timed for another cross-exam. Please allow the debater to respond to the audience questions that are being asked. Audience questions, like I said, are going to have top priority in the super chats and the Discord. So that's discord.gg/politics. Feel free to join, raise your hand. We'll get you pulled up. You can ask a voice question. This is time for the audience to ask on-topic questions. The topic here is, does a Christian God exist? If it's off topic, you may be removed from the stage, right? So make sure you keep the questions on topic. If a debater is asked a question during this time from an audience member and the other debater wants to jump in and ask for clarification, that's totally cool. But once again, this is not a second cross exam. This is time for you guys to build ammunition for the closing statements, right? So hopefully we can get some audience questions, asking both of you some questions there. Interruption etiquette, keep interruptions to a minimum. Please allow your debate opponent to fully state their positions. If you need to clarify or point out that something didn't address a question, please just wait until they finish their point. Don't jump in and start overpowering them with a loud microphone, right? If you must interject, please do so politely by asking phrases as, may I interrupt? Do you mind if I jump in? Or may I provide input? The goal here is to have a respectful engagement between the debaters, allow your interlocutor the opportunity to make their points without undue interruption. We are participants, not adversaries, right? We're having a discussion about the topic. We're not in battle, right? So just keep that in mind. I know debates can get kind of heated, though. Continuous interruptions or over-talking may lead to the use of moderation tools to ensure fairness. Protecting the speaking time of both the affirmative and the negative sides is my top priority. I will strive to remain an unbiased moderator throughout the debate. Do you two have any questions, or are you ready to get into this? All right, cool. Jack, let me know when you're ready. I got to get this. Hang on one second. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll start the 10-minute timer. Perfect.
Ready?
All right, starting the timer now.
Thank you. So for this question, does the Christian God exist? It's a question that I didn't give an awful lot of thought to in my past, but I am here to do my best to present the affirmative case. And Leo, I honor you. I appreciate you. He and I have not spoken much at all since the agreement to try this, and my approach to this question may be different than many others. Does the Christian God exist? Now, it really comes down to perspectives, the definitions of some of these things. What does it mean, Christian? What is the relation between a Christian and that God? And if there is that God, how do you show it exists? My views on the God of Jesus and through his beingness and records, which I do trust, there's been enough search into the story. I do believe that there's enough confirmation that there truly was a master, an excellent teacher who lived and died 2,000 years ago. And if that is true, and the older parts of the Bible are true, then this man was predicted and prophesied. So he fulfilled predictions made from hundreds of years ago. And, you know, the words and the wisdom that are shared through him, words of faith, words of forgiveness, words of love, those are what I sought out to better understand for myself. And my hope is, sincerely, with this opportunity today, I've been dying to have conversations like this where they don't descend into arguments. And I think this is an important topic, because if the God of the Christ is true, then it's more evidence that our world is insane. And I'm pretty sure our world is insane, and it's the result of denying the truth. I'm wearing a shirt today. It says, the first casualty of war is the truth, and the rest are mostly civilians. And mankind's been lying to one another eons. It's been recorded throughout history. But secrets and lies create the enemies. And the God that Jesus spoke of, you know, that was pointing at the Father, is the Father of truth. Now, the Father of truth controls all things. If it's not true, it's not real. And if it's not real, it's not relevant. But that comes back to this question. Does the Christian God exist? It's been questioned and wondered thousands of years, right? So what an honor for us to be able to still have these questions. But to me, the evidence is pretty clear. It's a resounding yes. And to be able to explain it is challenging because it's an obvious, and yet it's so easily overlooked. For me, the Christian God is the truth, and the truth is God. And it sounds complex, like that doesn't make sense until you give it some thought. And then you can understand there is only the one experience, the one universal experience that we are participating in at this moment. The universe and God and us, in my perspective, are inseparable. It's all one experience. God, in my definition, my clumsy explanations, I believe God is the truth that is revealed to us through the moments of our life, day by day. And we learn as we go through this life. It's a lifetime of discovery.
5 minutes.
Thank you. It's a lifetime of discovery. And in the, if you, in the realm of consciousness, right? Consciousness has been debated for eons as well. Consciousness, God, life, these are true mysteries that we all possess. We all have relationships with. But let me bring back another source of evidence that I found. Love. Love is a mystery and undefinable energy. It moves us. It destroys us sometimes. But love, it was said that God is love. And I've come to trust in that as well. So my hope is being able to have conversations with another really wise mind like your own. Maybe you can help me explain what I'm trying to say a little better, or help me figure out where I'm going wrong. And I think I'll yield from there. Please.
Perfect. Thank you for the great intro. Leo, let me know when you're ready. I got to restart this timer real quick. All right, let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your timer.
I'm ready.
You have 10 minutes starting now.
So the question before us is, does the Christian God exist? And personally, I think the answer to that question is not quite as complex as some other people might say that it is. I think the answer is no. I think pretty confidently the answer is no. And for tonight's debate, I'm going to be approaching the question from a naturalist perspective. And there's really just 3 points that I want to make that I think, when considered in conjunction with one another, give us much more reason to suppose that naturalism is true than that theism of any sort, to include Christian theism, is true. The first point that I want to bring up is the success of empirical science. The empirical sciences, physics, chemistry, biology, have given us so much knowledge about the way that our world works, from the cosmic to the quantum, through a variety of different scales. And while we do not know everything about our reality, the one thing that we do know is that in no aspect of any area of the physical sciences have we ever had to appeal to anything non-physical or supernatural. And it doesn't seem like we need to assume anything non-physical or supernatural to properly do science. Many people will say, sure, but supernatural things cannot be supported via empirical science. And quite frankly, I just think that's a point against supernatural things. I think that that's exactly what we would expect if there were no supernatural things, is that you couldn't understand them through science or any other methodology for that matter. And I think the fact that we see no such things, we have no reason to suppose such things, as per the empirical sciences, I think that that is a point against the existence of supernatural things, to include the Christian God. The second point I want to bring up is the incongruence of religious belief across space and time, the fact that throughout time and across a variety of different nations and continents, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of different independent religious beliefs differing in what they believe is fundamental to reality, in what they believe is fundamental to their religion, in the kinds of gods that exist and what they're capable of, and even within certain religious traditions, Christianity, we can see difference, in fact, between the beliefs that are held. If you were to put a Mormon and a Catholic next to each other, you would see stark differences in how they view Christianity, despite both being Christians. And I think that this is just evidence that religions, to include Christianity, are things developed by humans and that evolve with humanity. I personally think humanity is slowly beginning to evolve past their need. But I think that given this, we have even more reason to reject not just the truth of Christian theism, but the idea that theism more broadly is true. And the final point is just that theism is ill-defined. You could define God in a variety of different ways, and quite frankly, for every Christian that you speak to, you'll probably get equally as many definitions of what God is. Again, going back to this, that even within certain Christian or religious traditions, there's such a variety in what is believed and what is considered fundamental and what is accepted and what isn't. There are modalists, there are Trinitarians, there are Unitarians, there are people that think Jesus visited Native Americans in North America. There's a variety of beliefs, and I think that this is because there isn't a unified definition. I don't really like saying that, but I'm going to say it for time's sake. There isn't really a unified definition under which all Christians can sort of gather, and I think that that's the reason we see such variety in these theistic ideas, whether within religions or across religions, is because, quite frankly, theism is an ill-defined concept. And I think that considering these three things, we have good reason not just to reject Christian theism, but to reject, again, the notion of theism more broadly. And I think that what this shows us is that something like naturalism is probably more true, or is probably true given what we know and what we can understand about our world and our place within it, than something like Christian theism. And I will cede the rest of my time.
Perfect. Thank you for the great intros, both of y'all. I did want to let you know, Leo, that one of the commenters did say that your mustache is looking almost divine. Now, with that being said, we'll be moving into the affirmative cross-exam. Once again, this cross-exam on both sides is for the person whose time it is to be asking questions to the other person. Your goal is to build a case for your side. So, Jack, you're going to be building a case that the Christian God exists. Leo, you're going to be building a case that the Christian God does not exist through your questioning, right? With that being said, let me know when you're ready, Jack, and I'll set the timer.
I believe I'm ready.
Cool. Your 30 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Leo, with your wonderful opening, we agree with more than we disagree, I'm sure. It's interesting how we can come to so many agreements of the flaws of religion and the clear evidence that distorts the truth. But we found different conclusions. And that's the interesting part about being a human, isn't it? So some of the things that I was curious about, imperial sciences, I agree. We've discovered a lot collectively. So where did the sciences are human interpretations, right? Conscious human interpretations of patterns discovered in the universal realm. So where did those patterns come from? That's the question. And maybe you have an answer to that go to naturalism, because that's where you were pointing us. Is there an answer to that in naturalism?
I think a lot of naturalists might answer that question a little bit differently, but for me, as someone who takes physical reality to just sort of be what philosophers would call a brute contingency, it just exists, and there is no like external reasoning behind why it exists. It most literally just exists implicator. And I would say that we are capable of discovering that there are patterns and regularities in nature, but I would say that there isn't any explanation for why they're there. They're just a part of nature, in the natural world just is.
I think I follow what you're saying. Now, here's where my mind actually went in trying to understand the divine, right? If you reject theists, do you believe in a divine? Anything divine or holy?
As most people understand the term, no, I do not.
Okay. All right. Here, admittedly, the way I came to my conclusions of accepting that there is a God is I started looking beyond just my own perspective and started trying to think outside of the box, outside of the circle. And what if all this material realm, what if it's only real to us? I
would
actually,
say,
go ahead, please.
I would say if it's just real to us, I take that as meaning that maybe humans somehow play a part in constructing reality. And I would say that if that, like, I can grant that that's the case, and for me, to live and be and enjoy the existence that I do have, I have to act. Even if I grant that I'm just a brain in a vat, I don't act like I'm a brain in a vat. I can't act like I'm a brain in a vat or anything like that. If I want to live a comfortable and enjoyable life, I have to at least act like there is an external world and that we can learn about it and that I am a part of it and that I am capable of interacting with it through a variety of perceptual senses. So for me, at the end of the day, I can grant any idea, of these supposed skeptical scenarios, not necessarily that you were presenting one, but just more broadly. And I think that it doesn't fundamentally change anything about how we live. If tomorrow you found out that you're a brain in a vat, to anybody listening, and so somebody like came to you in a dream and said, "Yeah, I'm the doctor. I've got your brain. It's in a vat. This is all just me stimulating your brain, and I'm going to let you continue on living your life," nothing would probably change. Maybe you might consider some things existentially if you're a big thinker and you know what that means. But at the end of the day, you're still going to go out with your friends. You're still going to go do your job. You're still going to live in your house. You're still going to, enjoy the holidays with your family, and you're still going to live your life. So I don't think anything changes if somehow humans construct reality, or if some sort of skeptic scenario was real.
Can you imagine
Hopefully that
if
answers the question.
It does, I think. But can you imagine that if that doctor, scientist, whatever came in, showed you the evidence, yep, you're just a brain in a vat, whatever. Do you think you could see yourself taking more risks, maybe having more fun? I know that's
personally, honestly, I don't know. I think some people some people might see it that way. But for me, I don't really know. If that were to actually happen to me, I don't know how I would react. I think I would probably just be like, okay. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and keep doing whatever I was doing, like nothing changed. And again, I think that's how most people, if they had that happen to them, that's what they would do. I think not everybody, but I think most people would just kind of go, okay, and then keep living.
Each person is individual, and truly, we'd never really know what we would do until we're placed into that situation. But my situation kind of brought me to that conclusion that life isn't quite as real as I thought it was. Most of the things I thought were real turned out to be absolute lies. Relationships, governments, contracts, all sorts of things, right? We live in a world of lies. So it's hard to know what is true. And what I've been learning is it's taught through many religions, but it's confirmed truly through the Christ in the way to live with faith. Now, my own life, I learned of Jesus. wait, maybe this isn't the time. This is the cross, my time to ask you questions.
A little bit of a back and forth is okay too. You're in control of the time, right?
Yes. Non-congruence. Non-congruence with the religions. That was another point that you made for sure. In my opinion, that actually points evidence to the misinterpretations of what the Christ said. Because what Christ was teaching is that we are, when truly living with love, we are children. We've been given this world to learn, to discover, to share. We were born into a corrupted world. So, regarding, oh, I'm sorry, I took myself off. Where was I going with the non-congruence? Because we agree there's a problem, there's misinterpretations, there's different applications of the same words. What Christ was teaching, though, the purity of that wisdom, I stepped out in my own life and started putting it into practice. So I'm curious to know, in your statement, your opening, let me get back to you. You said you reject theism. Now that means you don't have any considerate. I don't want to assume in your definitions of theism or supernatural, because knowledge, is that not, it's without form, it's not a material, it's not really measured in any capacity, but knowledge is a supernatural force, is it not?
I would say no. I would say knowledge is conceptual.
Knowledge is conceptual, yet knowledge is true, is it not?
Well, I think truth is a condition of knowledge, but I don't take truth to be like a property of anything other than, say, maybe sentences.
Right, truth is words. But truth is also, it's everything. It comes back. So, okay, so here's where we're parting. I'm seeing it then. Here's the challenge. The truth can be presented, can be offered, but it can never be understood unless it's accepted. And it's easy to find reasons to reject God. It's easy to find reasons to reject love. It's easy to find reasons to reject anything. But if you allow it to be, here's where my thought went with what you said. You said thoughts are concepts or along those lines. I believe we are concepts because we're continually changing. There's no clear definition on what a man or a woman actually is. We're concepts. Concepts of a man or a woman or a human being or all these other words and labels we've found, right? So God is a concept. I mean, I can't pick it up and show you, definitely, but behind the words, there's plenty of evidence for that concept. There's a source of creation. And everything in creation has a creator. And we are the creation who is the living truth of today. So, what are your... I spoke my opinions on your words, right? The concept and the thought, but I didn't ask a question. I don't know what question to ask you, to be honest. Maybe I didn't pay any attention to the time, but maybe I'll concede. Here.
Are you have 18 minutes and 45 seconds left. Do you want to cede the last of your time, or do you want to ask some more questions?
Well, my mind is kind of blanking, admittedly. And here, I'm an amateur. I haven't done this type of conversation. How about this? Let me try a different approach. Okay. I'm trying to understand, okay, because my position, I state that there is one source, one God that is all powerful, all knowing, all being. And it is beyond definitions, it's beyond limits. And it is the one who created all of us. And through its grace, it offered forth a teacher, many teachers, and then it eventually offered forth us. So if you focus simply on the material, this is where I'm a little confused. Where does that come from? The laws of science and all of this, it just, from nothing, it's just there?
I don't think it came from anywhere. I'm not sure that I would agree that the laws of nature are things out in the world. I think that more probably they're features of our physical theories about the world rather than things in themselves. And so then laws of physics are just features of physical theories. They're not actually like even if I grant that laws of nature are like things out in the world in whatever sense one takes that, I do not take the laws of nature to be prescriptive. I do not think that the laws of nature sort of tell reality what to do and how to do it, so to speak. That they're more descriptive. They're more descriptive of the patterns that we in the regularities that we find when we examine nature. And I think that's probably what leads me to suppose that rather than being things out in the world, things in themselves, that the laws of nature are probably just features of our physical theories.
Well, the laws of nature are man's interpretation, certainly. And that comes back to the variable of consciousness. And this is what I came to accept. You understand, you're a smart guy, you understand the material sciences, but what force brings cells and molecules together to create the body? I mean, because we know we're made up of molecules and atoms and viruses and bacteria and all these trillions of parts, so they say. Do you agree with that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. But you don't agree that there's an intelligent designer, intelligent creator behind that system?
That's correct. I don't see a reason to suppose intelligent. I don't see when I look at the human body, I don't see the hallmarks of an intelligent designer. Why do we have teeth that come in our late teens that then get ripped out because they pose more of a hazard being in our mouth than not? Why do we eat from the same orifice for the most part that we breathe from? I mean, there's just, and those are just really simple examples. There's way more complex and examples that actually have a little bit more like force behind them when presented, but I don't see the hallmarks of intelligence. I see the hallmarks of patterns arising out of what would otherwise be relatively stochastic chemical systems.
Fascinating. All right, so when you'd create the universe, you'd create a mankind differently than what God did, but that's pretty good. I got you. There's
I don't know
flaws in
what
it.
I would do if I created a universe. I really don't know what I would do.
I'm playing, just having some fun. So I never gave much thought to that which I could not see in the past, right? I focused on the world around me. Tried to pay attention to politics and the other stuff, but I didn't. When I started looking within, practicing mindfulness, meditation, trying to get over my angry attitude, my bitterness. The more I started looking for me, there's the old adage, I searched for God, found only myself, searched for myself, and I did. I found out that I believe this reality, this realm we're experiencing, right? Anything before now, this morning, yesterday, 50 years ago, 2,000 years ago, this morning is memories. The future hasn't happened. We're only right now, and it's only right now. And right now, what are we? We're just perceptions. Conscious, we're aware of the consciousness that we've been given. So life is evidence of a divine intelligence. Mankind is kind of limited in our vocabulary and our explanations for the things we don't understand. But if you can accept, you can't see the cells, right? Can't see my cells, but you know they're there, right?
Of course.
That's how I am with God.
But we can detect those cells. How do we detect God?
Be aware that you have awareness. And then you know that God's consciousness is with you. God's will is for you to be aware of that moment. That's my evidence. I am.
Is that saying that it's impossible to exist without God?
Yes. In my opinion, yes, I believe that is true. Especially from our perceptions. As humans, we're limited in perception. We don't see all the light frequency. We don't hear all the sound frequency. We don't see or interpret a lot, yet our bodies and minds are designed for sensing. We're here to feel and then discover and know.
I mean, were you going to say something?
I was going to point to another supernatural force. Back to love. There's a reason for that beyond just the primitive protecting the species, I'm pretty sure. What do you believe love is for?
I think that depends largely on the perspective one takes. If you're looking from an evolutionary perspective, love would just be love is for reproduction, which itself is for survival of the species. I don't take such a reductive view of love myself, at least beyond that mere evolutionary standpoint there. I don't know if I would say love is for something. That seems to imply that love has like some sort of function, that it's aiming for something, and that seems to introduce certain normative aspects to an emotion that I don't think I would grant. I don't think that emotions in themselves are normative.
So you believe we developed all the chemicals and all the stuff for emotions to be, and they don't have a purpose?
I would say that purpose is going to be building connections and keeping the species alive and healthy at the end of the day. I think that's why empathy and altruism are big features of humans in virtue of being a social species. It's why I also think we're a social species, is these developed as means to improve the survivability, so to speak, of humans. I think that they mean more than just that to most people, and I think that that's perfectly okay.
Can we come back to this question, the topic of divine? Can I offer you my idea of divine? Divine, from our perspective, is that which is over, rises over, overcomes the humanity, the human. So divine would be love, right? Love overcomes our misery, brings us joy. Truth. Truth brings us answers. It calms our heart if it's the right one, if it's the one our heart wants. So, forces of divine, I view that to be true. And so I consider holiness. What is holy to me? The truth, love, life. Those three things are holy to me. And I believe all three of those things are evidence of God.
I certainly value all three of those things, at least to some extent. That extent may vary between the three, but I don't think it's my time to ask questions. But the only thing that I would have there is a question, and that would just be, in virtue of what are things like love, life, and truth evidence for God? For me, I take evidence to be something that is expected given some ideal, some theory, some thesis, or some hypothesis, such that if observed, raises by some amount the probability of the truth of that hypothesis or that theory or that thesis or that ideal. So if I said X is evidence for Y, and I observed, what I'm saying is that if I saw X, that makes seeing X makes Y more likely to be true, is a simple way to put it.
Gotcha. You know, I want to be respectful of the format, but I really do just want to talk. So I'm going to concede that
I do too,
anyone-
honestly.
If
I
you
don't
wanna
do
use
well
the-
in cross-examinations.
If you want to use the rest of your time, Jack, to have a back and forth, you're totally welcome to. You've got
Can we
6
add my
minutes and-
time to that too? Because that's what I'm going to do with my time anyway. I would prefer a back and forth in this.
That's fine. We can do that. Give me 2 seconds to change this timer real fast.
Thank you.
I don't do well in cross-examinations because for me, my questions tend to come more from just kind of having a free-flowing discussion with somebody, and then the questions sort of naturally arise.
So to be clear, you two
That's
are
just-
wanting to
that's
turn
just
this
me, though.
into a 36-minute cross-exam, right? Or a back and forth, right?
Yes, that's
right.
what I would prefer myself.
I'll start the timer on that now.
Thank you to you both. Please, the floor is yours.
So I guess with the evidence thing, I would be curious to know how, because for me, I don't think that the existence of an emotion like love or the existence of life, whether as a system or however one chooses to characterize it, or the existence of concepts like truth or knowledge or what have you, to me, these are is equally expected on a naturalist view than on any particular theist view, Christian or otherwise. So for me, I struggle to understand how they could serve as evidence for God if their existence doesn't raise the probability of God's existence. And if it does, then I would just be curious to know the ways in which the existence of those things raises the probability of God's existence.
Beyond the intelligence that would be the assumed intelligence that would be required to create the laws and the biology and all of this stuff, beyond the assumptions of that level of intelligence, I guess it doesn't. I don't know if it would. But that's what I view it as. I believe we're actually thoughts. We're individual thoughts in the mind of a creative force. I believe that all exists, that we exist, this energy field, the whatever they call it. We live in an infinite field of energy, which is what science is pointing at. And I believe that where there's energy brings potential. Potential brings opportunities, discoveries, brings information. We're individual thoughts growing in knowledge within the mind of God. That's how I see the world now.
That sounds very much almost like a panentheist view is taken, which I mean that's not like a bad thing or anything, but it's the idea that the universe and everything within it is sort of contained within God or is a part of God, which when I was a Catholic, I had that sort of view about the world. It's made more sense to me to say that the physical reality was somehow a part of God rather than this entity completely separate from God. That just didn't make sense to me. Now I take a simpler view and say that there's just physical reality and it exists, and that's all.
But your physical reality includes radiation, cosmic waves. I mean,
Oh, of course.
right. So it's not as completely physical as we perceive. Here's
I take electromagnetic radiation to be physical.
yes, it's measurable, it's detectable. I can understand that. I am more and more convinced though in the idea. I don't know the right way to describe it because my vocabulary is still growing. I don't know how to define. You said something pan something.
Panentheism. P-A-N-E-N, and then the word theism put together as a
Theism.
compound word.
That might have been one I came across recently. Solipsism or something was another one that people said I'm sounding like.
I don't personally hear solipsism in what you're describing myself, but maybe I just don't understand solipsism.
What I'm pointing at, I'm really, if you follow the logic, right, regarding thoughts and feelings, number one, we only think or feel anything in the present moment of life, right? We can only think or feel while we're here. So what we think and feel is based off memories. But people stay attached to the past in their thoughts and their feelings, and they live detached from today. And that's what I used to do. But then I started trying to discover what love was, and I tried to figure out how to overcome my fears. What I realized is my memories and my imagination, those two things were causing me to get angry. They were causing me to feel miserable. When the day was beautiful, there was no reason to be upset. So what I realized, how are we not anything more than thoughts and feelings? Are thoughts and feelings real?
Are thoughts and feelings real? I think generally I would. I'm going to say no to that. That seems a little maybe ridiculous, but I can just to touch on living without fear and coming to understand love, because I've got some thoughts about how that's played a role in my life, and for me, I it's been about close, very close to like almost exactly 10 years. We're about a few months away from when I initially lost my faith, went from being a Catholic to I was more of an agnostic, and then it was 2016 that I really was solidified into atheism, where I believe there are no gods, which I've maintained to today. But it was a very difficult process. It's not something I wanted. I didn't want to stop being a theist. It happened. I was simply convinced away from it. And I definitely feel that now, and it's taken some time, and that's the thing for people, for anybody who loses their faith, is it will take time. It's different for everybody, but it will take time to really sort of. I don't want to sound like one of those weirdo crackpot people, but to sort of find yourself and figure out what life is for you after being religious or believing in God, simply being theistic. But for me, I think I live without fear much more so now than I did when I was a theist. And I think I mean, obviously I'm older than I was now by 10 years. So that can play. That certainly plays a factor in that. It's just being older and having more life experience. But the framework that I use for looking at the world, that I feel helps inform that living without fear mentality, I feel is much more honed and much more well developed as a result of not believing not believing in any God and not having any particular religion. And I think that's evidence that people can live without being religious, live without theism, which and still find meaning and purpose and still be moral and all of these things. And I think that since we know that religiosity is not needed for those things, to lead that kind of life, to think those in those kinds of ways, is just more evidence, maybe not very strong evidence, certainly on its own it's not very strong evidence, but evidence nonetheless that perhaps there are no gods.
I went the other way. I'm convinced that only God is. We are temporary experiences of the one universal force of creation. We are a part of that which is. And if you follow my words through, well, that which is God. And you said something, I kind of chuckled, and I didn't mean to do that. It was your story.
Oh,
you
you're
shared,
fine. You're
but
not going to hurt my feelings.
I didn't think so. Not if you're doing this stuff, right? But you mentioned the history of being a Catholic and fear. Golly geez, man. That, I don't know. I've got an outside view of Catholicism, but my experience has been, wow, holy cows, dude.
It's
I
something
actually,
else.
what's that? Yeah. Here's where I went back to the earlier question, or the earlier idea of, would you be different if you realized this was just kind of a simulation? I started playing in my mind a little bit, testing it out a little bit. What if this is? What if this is a simulation? What if I take these chances? Will I be okay? And somehow I've made it. I made it here. I haven't done anything spectacular, but yet. But my goal is, I forgot to mention this in my introduction, but my goal is to find a way to speak with Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the other people in Washington, D.C., because I think what is happening in America is it's evidence that it's time to change. And what reminded me of that was the Pope, Catholicism. I think it's time for the Vatican to open up their secret libraries, share some information.
I think that would actually be pretty cool. I agree with that.
I believe I've come to accept the wisdom and the truth from the Bible, and particularly the ideas about the eternal God and the eternal rule of Christ, the eternal reign of Christ. Love. Love is what Jesus was and shared and showed. Love is eternally present and available for us to accept, to nurture, to grow, or to deny. We don't have to accept love. We don't have to accept the truth, but we do have to accept the life we've been given. And things change in our lives. So we're living at a time, Leo, it could be you're part of this testimony, you're part of the evidence showing that the answer may not be in religion, but I think I am going to be evidence that the answers are there, because I'm hoping to do something big in this lifetime.
I'm hoping to, honestly. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm certainly hoping for it, trying for it.
Today's helping it happen, brother. It really is.
I hope so.
Well,
I
the
certainly
future.
hope so.
Please consider this. You guys are very intelligent, and can tie back to the topic very easily. Behind this division of wealth and authority, there's one problem. Secrets are legal. When secrets are no longer legal, Earth will no longer be a land of prisoners and insanity. We can have the truth be shared. And the truth, in my own path of recovery, the truth set me free. I'm confident God is the truth. It's there for us. What's that?
I hear a lot of, particularly Christians, say that God is truth. And I have to be honest, I'm just not sure what is meant by that, because I take truth to be I take truth to be, number one, be conceptual, and number two, be this feature of linguistic systems. Is God a feature of linguistic systems, or I'm just not sure what the phrase God is truth means. It's like saying God is love or God is good. I don't know. I don't know what these things mean.
Those are all true. And in the stories of the Bible, I don't remember. The storytelling, right? In the storytelling part, God created, man named. We're built, we're designed for all these namings and definitions so that we can learn and grow. But our prideful minds and our ignorant minds, we get confused. So it's been said for many, the Hermetic stuff too, about all is mental. All mental is thought. And thoughts, they're concepts that we interpret. And that's what life really is, isn't it? A conceptual game of interpretation and creation.
Well, I think life is something, number one, physical, number two, chemical, and that results from primarily the interaction of the genome of populations of organisms, genomes of organisms and populations with their environment. I would say that gives rise to morphologic change in these organisms over geologic time. I would say this is evidenced quite bluntly, quite plainly by the fossil record, which is itself corroborated by the genomic record.
A thought that came up when you were saying that regarding the natural patterns. The intelligence shows that people create, or the pieces create, right? The molecules unite to form the body. That's where mankind has gone wrong. We've been divided. And then through the divisions, people get corrupted. They get afraid and angry. And it's because people don't know what's really going on. But the time is happening. We are here experiencing a shift in consciousness. People, because of I want to keep it on topic. Christian, well, this is. Life is. If you can accept the Bible, right, and accept that it is a collection of books and stories that have been meticulously, well, pretty well recorded and passed down for a long time. There's a reason for it. You mentioned something earlier, Leo, about flaws in design. And you questioned something else I had said previously. I'm convinced there is no coincidence. I don't believe that there are mistakes. There's lessons, and I mean, not from the natural side. Do you believe that it's random, or do you believe that the nature is orderless? No.
Like the natural world, nature.
Yeah.
It depends on what one means by order. If by order one just means like non-chaos, like some sort of regularity, then yes, the natural world possesses regularity.
It does. Well, and even if there is order, that wouldn't change that there couldn't be mistakes. That's kind of where I was leaning at anyway.
So, Jack, you remember the topic that Christian God, or does a Christian God exist? You're the affirmative, Leo's the negative, so you're both trying to build a case.
Burden is on me, I'm sure, for the affirmative. I believe the evidence of the Creator is in the creation. And if you look at yourself, how your body operates, the synchronicity between the design, we breathe in what plants breathe out, right? We consume the fruits and the medicines that grow naturally in this environment we've been given. When mankind changes its ways and learns how to get along, when we accept the truth of love, when we accept the truth, period, we can change this world together. Because I'm pretty sure this is a dream God imagined for us to create. And the folks who came before us, go ahead, please.
I think that the idea that the universe is itself evidence for God's existence sort of presupposes the idea that it was created by God, especially if we refer to it as creation. I don't think the universe was created. I don't think anything inside of it was created except for the things that are created by like humans or other animals like birds. Birds create birds' nests. But other than that, yeah, I think the universe is there. I think the universe did not ever come into existence. I don't see a reason to suppose that it did. I don't think most experts see a reason to suppose that it did. And I struggle to find reason to think that I need to go beyond this ontology, this natural ontology that everyone can agree is there and that everyone can agree we can understand and learn about in order to explain the natural world. It seems to me that at worst we're just lacking for explanations for phenomena that we don't understand, but that's been true at every point that humans have existed. And we've only reduced the amount to which it is true. And I think that we will continue to do that. And I think that as we continue to do that, we will find that appeals to the supernatural or the divine or the spiritual or however it is people choose to understand that concept, that our need to appeal to that or utilize that in our explanations of the world around us will just continue to wane, as I think that we have seen that it has been doing, particularly over the last 600 to 800 years. And I think that that's evidence against the existence, well, not just the truth of Christianity, but the existence of God broadly. Is that when we look out into the world, as we have explained more and more of the world around us and why things are the way that they are and look the way that they look, we've used natural explanations, physical explanations rooted in empirical science have succeeded supernatural explanations. I don't think there's any valid example of it ever being the other way around. And I think that there's a reason for that. I think that reason is that that's likely because supernatural things aren't real. And even if they were, they probably have absolutely zero causal effect on reality. So they might as well not exist anyway, because there's nothing that we could ever do to confirm their existence. I take them to be unfalsifiable. And I think that unfalsifiable concepts are not only largely useless to our empirical sciences, but are largely useless with respect to a broader philosophical method for understanding the world around us.
I can see that. I can understand that argument. I'm curious, have you come across the work of Rupert Sheldrake by chance?
No, I've heard the name, but I don't know really much about who that person is.
What comes to mind is you're stating the claim that there's no empirical science, there's no data to prove, and I can't say he's, definitively done that, but he's found a way to do studies to kind of demonstrate the unified field, field of consciousness from which we are. And he's got some really interesting work. There's been a lot of discoveries in sciences in different ways, and we can learn about things online, and we're living at an incredible age. I believe we have the knowledge and the explanations available. We can overcome the disagreements between religions, politics, economics, and we can really create a better world for the future.
You mentioned there, sort of like resolving the differences between religions. That reminds me of a point that you did bring up earlier, about I guess a single message being delivered through a variety of different religious beliefs or something along those lines. I guess my question there would be why would a God that is all powerful want, assuming that this God wants its message to be properly received by all humans. So we're starting with that as an assumption that this God is all powerful and it wants its message to be universally understood by humans. Why then would it take an approach that gives us a variety of different religions and a variety of different belief systems, even within the same religious traditions? That just seems, it doesn't seem like if your desire was to give a message that is universally understood, that you would do it in a way that results in the message not being universally understood.
It's a fair question, argument, and I've heard it raised elsewhere. I've come to the conclusion that all things happen for a purpose. And every one of these religions, it's processed through the consciousness and language of the different culture, the different time. But they point to the same thing, the result of, right? If there's an acceptance, if the individual, me, if I accept that there is a divine creator, a divine force, and I trust that God is with me, I can feel more peace. And for thousands of years, there's been different descriptions from samadhi, nirvana, the Buddha nature, and then Christ Jesus comes saying the kingdom of heaven. They're all pointing at the same thing.
So, is there? Oh, there's something else you wanted to say there quickly. For me, a lot of people will say, and I want to preface by saying I don't think there's anything wrong with this perspective. I don't think that if this is the way that people live and this is what helps them live their best life, that they should abandon these beliefs. But the idea, believing or accepting a religion because it feels good for somebody, that's all well and good. I'm not saying that you can't do that or that you shouldn't do that, but it doesn't say anything about whether or not those beliefs are in fact true. And I think that for anyone who truly does value the truth, you in that instance, you ought to believe things because there are good reasons to suspect that they are in fact true, rather than basing your belief in them on how it makes you feel.
Yes and no. I can agree. However, how do you know what is true without feeling?
But that depends. Without feeling, in the sense of how do I know what's true about the world without a way to perceive it? I don't know if there would be a way to do that. If there is, it's going to be some sort of indirect method. More broadly, how do I know it's true? Me personally, it just depends on whether or not it meets the criteria that I have for truth.
What I found in myself, I'm pretty sure I'm just like everybody else. We've got these inner guidance systems. When I'm not honest, I feel different. When I hear something and it's you feel you can't really put your finger on it, but you feel there's something off, something not right, or you receive information, knowledge, words, right? We receive that supernatural, the information and communication. We receive that, and if it resonates, we get like a confirmation. I get a confirmation feeling inside of myself. And often you get the right answer, the right information, it can settle your heart. It can make you feel good.
I take it you think information is not physical?
No. Information is I don't know the right words. It's describing the thing. Information is a reflection of, an interpretation of the thing. But information is a thing too.
I definitely agree information is a thing. I take information to be a physical concept for the mere fact that I don't know what if something wasn't physical, what is the information about what contains the information? What is the information relevant to if there weren't something there for it to be? And I agree with you that it's kind of hard to sort of characterize what information is, and that's because it can be used in a variety of different contexts, and they all use it a little bit differently. So I usually don't try to ask people to, well, tell me define what information is. Well, there's nuance there that I think can sort of muddle the discussion a little bit, but I do think information is something physical. I think that a lot of people working in the areas of information theory and computation would probably agree that information is, if you didn't have physical stuff, it wouldn't make sense to say that you have information.
Okay. But it would be a secondary as a result of the objective. Whatever the thing is, the information is a precursor. There you go. It's the interconnection between the observer and the exterior. So information, I think you'd have a tough time proving that to be material because it's an unseen communicator between the mind of the beholder, the observer, and whatever the information is pointing at. It's an unseen connector.
I think that humans can understand information. I mean, I don't think we struggle to do that, but I think that's in virtue of understanding physical things. If I held up my cup, there's information in this cup. You could say that the various properties that it has, its shape, the material that it's made out of, all these things that we can say about the cup are its information. But if there were no cup, what would it mean to say that the cup has information if there is no cup? What would it mean to say that I can understand what a cup is in virtue of some sort of information if there were no cup there?
Interesting. I kind of lost where you were going, but what came to mind is I imagine God is the cup. We've got evidence of the information. What's it contained in? Where does it come from? How did we evolve? Well, I can understand that. I was going to say, how did we evolve logic and reasoning? But that makes sense because nature follows logical and reasoned patterns as well. That's how we have the sciences, right?
I'm going to say something that's probably a lot of people might consider controversial. I don't think nature follows logical laws. I think logical laws are sort of I think logic as a system is a sort of linguistic schema that humans came up with. as a result of being a communicating species. It's sort of a way of formalizing the systems through which we communicate and understand information. But yeah, I don't think that like the natural world obeys laws of logic.
3 minutes remaining.
3 minutes remaining?
Yes, sir. It was
Yes.
36 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's just that went a little quicker than I thought it was going to.
Did. So I'm challenged now because it appears we're not in agreement on logic or love. And I consider logic and love to be the full process necessary for understanding. And understanding requires the input of information so that we can achieve the truth. But if you don't deny logic and love.
No, I just think that they're not like the word that I think a lot of people would use here. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I'm going to use it because I think it's what a lot of people that take a position similar to yours would use. I don't view like logic or truth or love as these sort of transcendental features where there's something over and above the physical world that impose or interact with it in some way. I think for mostly that love is an emotion, that it's a result of the chemistry of the human nervous system, and potentially the nervous system of other animal species. I think that love could be said to be held by other animal species, maybe not in the way that humans have it, but something that's certainly analog to that. And then I would say that logic is just this sort of conceptual schema that humans developed. If there were no humans, there'd be no logic.
Okay. If there were no oh, no, I don't agree. Well, maybe. Would there be math if humans didn't exist?
No.
Right, okay. Because that's a source of information. Information then technically only exists because man exists?
I think information is a feature of physical systems. So for me, and I also think, and now we're starting to get to kind of where it does matter what we mean by information, because I mean, I think that information can be used in a very colloquial sense, and I think that when it is used in a colloquial sense, it's kind of vague. I think that what most people, if you said if you just went to like New York and started walking around and asking random people, hey, just give me, there isn't a right or wrong answer here, but tell me what you think information is. I think most people would say that it's something along the lines of like the various properties, and this is kind of a technical term, but the degrees of freedom held by physical objects and the relations between them. So I think that even colloquially, most people, I feel, think that information is probably some feature of the physical world that wouldn't make sense to talk about it without it.
That is time. If you guys want to finish your statements, though, we can finish the statements and we'll move into the Q&A.
Jack's free to have the last word if he wants, if there's anything he wants to say.
I think I'm good.
The affirmative is going to do the first conclusion, which is Jack, and then the negative, so Leo. Those will be 5 minutes each. Jack, whenever you're ready, let me know, and I'll start your 5-minute timer here. And once again, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, both of y'all, for all the questions. But let me know when you're ready.
I think I'm ready.
Cool. Starting your timer now.
You know, this question of, is there a creator to the creation that we are? I mean, everything that begins to exist, it has a cause. There's a cause to the existence. And I understand I can't prove that that the universe didn't eternally exist on its own. But the presumption makes sense to me, because in this field of experience, this field of time that we experience, anything we create, it requires action. It doesn't just create itself. There's a process and a source of life. And the source of life, while it can be, we can point to the sciences and the patterns that other people have found, we can point to the material part. But if you really think about it, who you are, who I am, it's infinite variables. There are so many variables included in who we become, the personality, the body type, the genetic patterns. There's infinite, incalculable variables involved, which to me, it's absolutely illogical for me to believe that somehow there's a randomness to all of this. So there is an order, and with an order comes an intelligence, an intelligent of design. And then I didn't address it in the opening, but the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is another evidence. It's the spirit of our consciousness, of our emotions that moves us. And we can move with the spirit of love, the spirit of comfort, the spirit of truth, or we can move with the spirit of anger and fear and resentment. Then there's the idea of the story of Jesus. Jesus, the incarnation, the manifestation of the Most High in a bodily form. And as the Bible claims, he was perfected in God's love. And where Jesus went, where perfection went, perfection emerged. We, through our corrupted minds and thoughts, we find and create a lot of imperfections. And one of the callers brought up the Mandela effect, and then even Leo pointed out that there's been changes in science, right? We learn new things. The perspective changes. The facts remain the same, but the explanations may change. And with the Mandela effect, I have a personal theory on this, that we are experiencing a shift, an end of the age, entering into the new age, because it's just a continuous cycle. And I think what's happening with the advancements in communication, technology, we're able to communicate with each other and compare things. And the Mandela effect may be another piece of evidence that proves to us time is an illusion. What we think may not always be real. And if what we think may not be real, then what does any of this mean? Without God, love, or wisdom, I believe life is miserable. There is no purpose. But if your purpose is to gather and grow, love, wisdom, and the knowing of life and the creative forces, it gets to be pretty fun. I think that's, well, let me conclude clearly. I am absolutely 100% convinced that if I exist, God exists. I know God to be real. My life seems kind of unreal. And yet here we are. That's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me reset the timer real fast. Leo, let me know when you're ready. Are you ready? Oh, sure.
All right. I'm ready.
All right. 5 minutes starts now.
So the question before us tonight was, does the Christian God exist? And I think that I still think the answer to the question is a resounding no. I think that I did a fair job in establishing that we can understand ourselves as humans, our place in the world and the world around us, without having to suppose any sort of theistic belief, let alone Christianity. And I don't think we heard any strong arguments in favor of Christianity being true. At least to the extent that anybody should believe it. So, yeah, I don't really have much more to say than that. There was one thing that Jack did say that I do have to correct, because I hear it a lot, and it is just straightforwardly false. And that is that time is an illusion. If time were an illusion, so would gravity be. But gravity is not an illusion. Gravity is a very real part of the world, and gravity is a very real part of the world because time is a very real part of the world. For those who are unfamiliar about the connection between time and gravity, I invite you to read any book on general relativity, and I will leave it there.